Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to England once again for the first time in what feels like a good little while. For this review, we are going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years, a few different styles, but I think it is most definitely fair to say that this brewery are best known for their different New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a rebrew of one they did a couple of years ago, but that one went down very, very well, and I've heard very good things about this particular version of it as well. So it's a style that I know this brewery do very well, and I have to say my curiosity has piqued with this one. So hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. And it's also been over a year since I last did a review from this brewery, so a return to them has been long overdue for quite a wee while. But yeah, for this review then, we are going to head down to Cornwall in the southwest of England, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Verdant Brewing Company. So this one is called There Was No Why. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this is another New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this beer was bought at the Caledonian Craft Beer Merchant over in Dunfermline, and this was one that was recommended to me by the owner. He said he really enjoyed this beer, and yeah, he's always given me good recommendations in the past, and I've not had anything from Verdant in quite a wee while, so this was one of these kind of fuck it, why not sort of things. But yeah, hopefully this one lives up to my expectations. But we've had very good beers from Verdant in the past, particularly in this New England hazy category. In fact, I think it's fair to say that these guys are one of the most respected hazy breweries down in England. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. Let's crack on then and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Verdant Brewing before, and we will hopefully be able to add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the English beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, but not as often as I would like. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a wee bit about Verdant Brewing. So Verdant Brewing are originally from Falmouth, which is down in the very kind of bottom part of Cornwall in the southwest of England, and the company was founded back in 2014 by Adam Robertson and James Heffron, who were later joined by Rich White. So Adam was a designer by trade, and James had been a home brewer for a number of years, and Rich was actually an electrician who helped them build the brewery, and he joined the company soon after as a partner. But they ordered their original brewing equipment back in 2014, and they started brewing their beers the following year in 2015. But initially they struggled to get their beers recognised in Cornwall because of the traditional beer culture. You know, you've got all these traditional kind of Cornish ales, if you like. But they proved to be a big hit in other parts of the country, and this really helped them kind of just grow steadily and get more recognised locally as well. But originally, these guys were based in the Tregenigi Industrial Estate in the west of Falmouth, and this brewery was upgraded to a 16 hectolitre system with a weekly brew capacity of 8,000 litres at maximum. But later, they opened up their restaurant or bar on Quay Street in 2018 after a crowdfunding campaign, and very recently, I think it was maybe toward the end of 2020 actually, so I say very recently, but it is nearly 2 years ago now, but they opened up a new brewery in Penryn, which has a 35 hectolitre brewing system, and over the last kind of little while they have just been expanding their sales, developing new beers and doing lots of different things. They've been brewing a few more different styles in recent times from what I understand. But as of May 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 150 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. But like I said to you earlier, these guys are best known for their different kinds of New England hazy IPA. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Verdant Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all those different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's crack on then and see what we have with this beer. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open up. As you can see, it's quite simple and straightforward. You know, some of the Verdant artwork can be really extravagant and very, very pretty. This one is just a little bit more easygoing. The kind of woman looks like she's jumping off a diving board or something behind the sun. So yeah, looks pretty cool. But yeah, as you can see, it's a 440ml can. I believe I paid about £6.50 for this one. So that is going to be roughly, what, about €7.50, 75 Swedish kroner, and I guess somewhere in the region of like $8 American for those of you watching in different places in the world. So yeah, craft beer is a little bit more expensive here in Scotland than it is over in Sweden actually, which is kind of crazy to think, especially when you've got Systembolaget, but of course that's run not for profit. But anyway, yeah, 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double IPA, whatever you want to call it. The hops in this one are Citra, Galaxy and Mosaic. We know all of these hops quite well. Citra, of course, 14% alpha acid American, lovely big kind of mango juicy notes, good little bit of kind of lemon limey zesty character too. Galaxy from Australia, again 14% alpha acid. It's got a big passion fruity note to it, mangoes, pineapples, all of these sorts of things. Then Mosaic, another American hop, 14% alpha acid again, but a big kind of juicy tangerine sort of character to that one. But yeah, a really nice hop bill in this one, a classic hop bill that we've had many a time in different beers. But yeah, this beer was originally brewed back in 2019 from what I understand, and this one is pretty much the same recipe, but it has been played with to make it better a little bit. And this one contains oat and wheat in the malt base. But yeah, 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. There was no why from Verdant Brewing in Falmouth and Penryn in Cornwall in the southwest of England. Let's crack this guy open then and see how we get on. And I will try to remember to put a link to the Caledonian Craft Beer Merchant in Dunfermline in the video description for you below. But let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Very curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. But yeah, I think that's a good chunk. We'll leave a little bit in the can. I was going to say the bottle there. Mixing up bottle and can now. My brain really is going kaput. But we'll leave a little bit in just to get some more head before we actually taste the beer. But yeah, anyway, as you can see, this beer is poured pretty much as you would expect from a New England IPA of any description. So before the head disappears, I think it's safe to say that this one has poured with about a 3/4 finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. Oh, spilling a little bit there. There we go. But yeah, you can see this one has poured with that lovely white head there. You can see the bubbles on this one are lovely and very, very smooth. Very, very small. There's a few bigger bubbles sitting towards the top of the head there, but overall it does look very, very nice. I don't know what happened there. I think my finger just slipped. Or me just being daft, of course. But yeah, head-wise, that's going to fade away to be a nice kind of thin, foamy layer. But the colour of this beer, I have to say, this is one of the paler New England IPAs that I've come across in recent times. So if I put my hand behind that, you can see this beer it's a very, very pale yellow. I always like comparing the New England IPAs to different kind of fruit juices because that's just what their appearance reminds me of. But this one really comes across like a sort of pineapple juice, and that's one of the kind of palest fruit juices that I've found you can get. So yeah, very, very pale, but still quite bright yellow in this one at the same time. That sounds almost like that almost makes no sense. But yeah, you can see in the dead centre of the beer, the yellow is quite bright, but you know, toward the edges it is very, very pale. So yeah, remember the colour of these beers depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar is caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barley aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour too, but when it comes to New England hazies and many kinds of IPA, of course, you don't really need to care about those latter 2 variables. It is mostly about what type of malts that you use in these different things. But yeah, lovely, kind of very pale sort of pineapple juice colour, this one. It looks great. In terms of the level of haze on this one, it's kind of what you would expect for an 8%er, to be honest with you. It's not the soupiest and gloopiest one I've come across, but it is, you know, toward that end of the spectrum. So remember, the level of haze that you get in these beers depends on 1, the oak content, 2, the wheat content, and 3, the yeast to a degree as well. There's not really a rule about, you know, as you go up the alcohol scale, it should get more hazy, which would make sense because more malt, more oat and wheat, you know. Makes sense. There's not really a rule about that, but it can vary from brewery to brewery, recipe to recipe, and so on. But yeah, in terms of level of haze that you get from this one, for an 8%er, this is pretty much as you would expect. But yeah, other than that, I don't think we need to say anything more about the appearance of this beer. So let's go on and have a wee look at the aroma of this one and see how we get on. So sugar it up a wee bit and let's do this. Oh, that's quite interesting. I'm going to say straight away, the aroma of this beer is really quite unassuming. It's not one of these ones that kind of jumps out the glass at you, and that's quite interesting for sure. So yeah. You know, it's odd. When I sugar this beer up, it has this sort of almost vegetally, kind of herbally sort of thing to it. It is very, very freshly canned. That was one of the things that the guys in Caledonian told me, was it had been very, very freshly canned. So I'm just hoping that I've not opened this too fresh, if that makes sense, because I do think these beers need to be in the can for, you know, 2-3 weeks, just you get them in the prime. But I think it had been when I got it. I'm pretty sure he told me it had been in the can for about 2-3 weeks, so it should be all right. But yeah, I mean, straight away with this beer, you can smell it's lovely and juicy. It's very soft in its notes. It has got a little bit of this almost vegetally backbone to it, but the green component it smells very, very wet. And the malt base, it's a lot of oaty character that I'm getting out of this one. So yeah, the way that this beer goes about its business, I think, it's quite interesting, but definitely not one of the more pungent aromas I've come across in recent beer reviewing times, should we say. So yeah, let's have a wee look at that aroma a little bit more in depth. But as I say, for me, this is quite a tropical, juicy, oaty, and kind of smooth green beer. This one. So yeah, let's have a wee let's have a proper look at this aroma then. So yeah, you can really just smell how fresh this beer is. You start to get more and more of the green out of this one, absolutely. But let's focus on the malt base first. So for me, this beer, the backbone, you do get a little bit of that kind of fresh white bread crusty character out of it, but the oats, as I say, this is a really oaty leaning New England IPA. As I've said in these New England reviews before, for me there are 6 elements to think about with a New England IPA. They can be sort of farmhousey and yeasty, a little bit rye leaning and grainy. These 2 elements are a bit more common in American brewed New England IPAs, whereas you've also got wheaty bitey component, you've got the oaty creaminess, the barley malt bread, and also the sweet component, and those 4 elements are a bit more common in the European brewed ones. I would say that most of the European brewed IPAs are inspired by the likes of the Trillium wheaty ones and the Treehouse kind of oaty creamy ones. I've always found Verdant kind of go between that oaty and wheaty thing. But yeah, for me, in the malty side of things, at the back of the nose, I certainly do get a little bit of a kind of wheaty bitiness out of this one. There is a little bit of a kind of barley malt. There is a little touch of a barley malt bread in there. Absolutely, you get a little bit of that bread crusty backbone. I get some Jacob's cream cracker, like a bigger wheaty. You know, you can feel that hedgehog sort of fresh hedgehog roll bread crust in there. Definitely some fluffy barley malt bread, but the wheat smells quite thick, but I get a lot of oaty creaminess out of this one, and it's quite a wet oaty character. It's almost a little bit porridgey in a sense. I don't think this beer, I don't think it's got much in the way of a sweet component. It's really this oaty porridgey sort of thing, and that might just be because of how fresh it is. As I've said to you before, oaty character in these New England IPAs is always an indicator of how fresh your beer is. The kind of smoother that it is, you know, the fresher the beer is, but the kind of drier it is, that tells you your New England IPA is a little bit old. So I think this one is just, it smells really wet because it's very, very fresh in that sense. But yeah, I do get that kind of wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose too. I'm curious to see how this beer is going to turn out in the actual flavour, because the malty base just comes across as really, really wet just now. But I think that might just be the freshness. This is probably going to be the freshest New England IPA I've drank in quite a wee while, because in the ones that I drink in Sweden, I don't know how long those tend to sit for in some of these warehouses and stuff. But let's focus on the green component of this beer then. I think we've said everything we need to about the kind of malty side of things. The green component for me, again, it's not overly pungent. It's got quite a nice bright floral aromaticity to it. It's not spicy, it's not dank, it's just nice and bright and floral. On the front of the nose, you do get a little bit of a brighter kind of grassy side of things, and in the back of the nose, there's a wee touch of earthiness there, and I think that's most likely to come from mosaic, but that I would say that is very, very minimal. The green component for me is a bit floral, but quite bright and grassy in a lot of ways. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is quite interesting for sure. So on the on the fruity side of things, it's kind of what you would expect if you know these hops. So for me, there's a little bit of a pungent kind of passion fruit in there. That's from both the Citra and the Galaxy. You do get a bit of a juicy mango. I have to admit though, I think it's the passion fruit and the mango are the things that dominate. I get a wee bit of the more oily orangey notes from the mosaic. So yeah, you can smell that nice oily orangey character from the mosaic and the wee bit of passion fruit at the back of the nose. But yeah, there's a wee bit of, you get the juicy mango underneath too. It's almost like a very straight shooting New England IPA, this one, in kind of some ways. But these three hops, it's a kind of classic mix. You know these very, very well, to be honest. So this is one of these beers where it doesn't do anything overly surprising, but I think the thing that's getting me with this one, and the reason that it doesn't smell quite as pungent as some of the other ones, is because the oats, this one is so fresh that the oats are still in like a kind of porridgey, really, really wet kind of phase. But yeah, aroma wise, I think this is quite interesting for sure. It's a really oaty, creamy and soft kind of tropical fruit leaning New England IPA. So let's get this guy out, let's get the rest of it out into the glass, and we'll see how we get on with this one then. So yeah, this is the There Was No Why 2022 version. Remember, it was first brewed in 2019. There Was No Why, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double IPA from Verdant Brewing Company in Penryn and Falmouth in Cornwall in the southwest of England. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. I'm going to say straight away, it's very, very nice. Very, as I was kind of suspecting from the aroma, it's a very, very oaty, creamy leaning New England IPA. I always remember the Verdant ones being a little bit more wheaty and bitey than this, actually. But again, it's really nicely done. Yeah. Yeah, this is, as I say, I think this is the freshest New England IPA I've had in, quite some time. It's just a really soft, really just very, very soft New England IPA, this one. It does remind me, back in the day of the Stigberry, It's Amazing Haze, the O Narangi, these kind of things. It's one of these really old school, kind of light bready ones. But if you're going back to 2019, when this recipe was first made, it would make sense, wouldn't it? It would make a lot of sense. But yeah, that does go together really quite well, I have to say. So it gets a thumbs up. It gets a thumbs up from me, that's for sure. Yeah, just a big, oaty, creamy, soft, juicy, and kind of grassy leaning New England IPA. I think that's a fair sort of summary of the first impression. But But yeah, kind of makes me wish I could get a hold of some of the Verdant stuff a little bit more easily. They don't make it over to Sweden all that often. When I go to Denmark, where I can get some of the Verdant stuff, I'm always, I'm just always kind of more interested in getting Danish beers actually, because I know I can get the Verdant stuff when I come over here very easily. I'm more looking for stuff that's a bit of a novelty, if you like. But yeah, there was no why. Solid, big, oaty, creamy New England IPA from Verdant Brewing. If you like, the old school amazing haze, Narangi, the sort of treehouse type New England IPAs, this one is going to be right up your street. Absolutely. So yeah, on the middle third of the palate then, let's start there. Backbone of this beer, you get a lovely, very, very soft little bit of that kind of hedgehog roll, bread crusty sort of thing. You get a little bit of that. It's almost just as smooth as the crust. That is the backbone of the beer. On top of that, you can feel a sort of thin layer of that fluffy, but still slightly crisp, fresh white bread in there. You get a little bit of that from that barley malt. On top of that, you get the wheat, and you can feel the wheat layer is quite thin as well, but it adds a little bit of sort of crispness to the beer, if we can say that. And I think that works really, really nicely too. And yeah, on top of that, you can feel the oats, and the oats aren't thick in this one. This beer, and it's in the middle third of your palate, it's actually remarkable. It's almost, I don't know if crisp is the right word, but it's not this beer is nice and creamy, but it doesn't feel overly thick, if that at all makes sense. So we need to describe this a wee bit more in the mouthfeel. But yeah, this beer, the flavours all mixed together really well, but it doesn't feel overly thick and heavy in that manner of speaking. Yeah. So for me, as I say, lovely, soft, like hedgehog roll bit of bread crust, a sort of thin layer of barley malt bread, fluffy white bread. On top of that, you have the a kind of wheaty layer, and you can feel the wheat just sort of thickening out that bread a little bit. Then on top of that, you've got the nice oaty notes, and it's a very, down the middle line of your tongue, you get that almost sweetness out of the oats. It's got that big, thick, kind of creamy character to it, and it just gets a little bit drier as you go out toward the kind of edges of your palate there. So that big, thick, oaty, creamy sort of thing that comes out of this beer, I think, is very, very nice. In the dead centre of your palate, you get a little bit of that kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing, but that is very, very minimal. This is a really oaty note. It's almost, the level of oats that you get out of this beer is almost porridge-like. That's how creamy this one is in the middle of the palate. As I say, does not have that big sweet component that you get from many New England IPAs these days. This one is definitely a more oaty leaning, creamy, old school sort of beer. But I like that. I do like that. I like how within this New England style there's so many different nuances you can show. But this one, it really does remind me of, the amazing haze and the O Narangi and stuff like that. These old school Swedish New England IPAs. It's lovely, this, so massive thumbs up from me. The further you go into the aftertaste with it, in that middle third of the palate, you might get a little bit of a Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing. Maybe a very slightly woody note to it. But other than that, I don't think there's anything we need to say about the middle third of the palate in this beer. So let's focus on the back third of the palate then. The border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build-up in there. You can feel a wee bit more bread crust. Then the base of the back third of the palate is a little bit more of that soft bread crust. You get a wee touch of, again, you get a little touch of that... you get a little touch of that. You just get a wee bit touch more dryness. As I always say, more bitter and dry flavours come out toward the back of the palate. So you get a wee bit of that there. On top of that, you can feel that the sort of barley malt bread layer is a little bit taller, and again, it's got a wee bit more graininess and dryness to it. Then on top of that, you can feel some of the wheaty notes there, and you do get a little touch of a wheaty bitiness out of this one. Now on top of that, you get the yeasty character to the beer, so you get this slightly more dense, doughy, white bready note, and you can feel the crust. You can feel that the crusty, the bread, the sort of bready side of this beer, how do we say, the more, on top, on the doughy yeasty side of things, It actually has a little bit of this kind of farmhousey character, so you get this slightly crackery, woody sort of thing. So this beer, the further you go into the aftertaste with it, on that back third of the palate, you are going to get a fair yeasty presence out of this one, and that's a thing I think is more, with this beer being a little bit more old school. I don't think back in the day when I would have been trying Amazing Haze and stuff, I would have noticed that, but to me now, this beer does feel as if it has a little touch of that kind of farmhousey sort of vibe to it, but so I like that. So yeah, a bit more of a bitter bread crust, a slightly taller, slightly more grainy white bready layer, a bit of the wheaty bitiness, and then the yeasty character on top. But the back third of the palate, the flavour is definitely taller, and then as you move into the middle third of the palate, the flavour just squashes down a little bit more and condenses. So I like how this goes together for sure. Yeah. It's nice. On top of the, other than that, I don't think we need to say anything about the malty yeasty side of things. So let's look at the hoppy side of the beer. Back corners of the palate, green component first, back corners of the palate, there is a little touch of earthiness there, but as you move forward from that, you get this really wet, floral note out of this one. It's a big wet sort of oily kind of thing, and again I think this is due to the freshness of the beer, but I don't know if it's cryo that they're using in this. It might be, it could also be like oils or whatever, but I think this it might be something like that that's in here, because the green component is really smooth but oily at the same time. The further you go into the aftertaste, you do get a little bit more of that kind of green component coming out of it. But again, it's just really nice. Round the front curve of the palate, you get a little bit of that lighter grassy sort of thing, and there's a wee touch of zestiness in there, but I think all three of the hops in this one could contribute to that. But yeah, the green component is not particularly dank or anything, so that tells you that I think it's late addition hops. Remember, 3 types of hopping. Early addition hops within the first hour of your wort boil, that gives you pretty much all your bitterness. In the last half hour of your wort boil, that's late addition hopping, little touch of bitterness, mainly flavour and aroma. Dry hopping is completely flavour and aroma, and that's after your wort boil. So West Coast IPAs use all 3. The New England IPAs tend to rely on the latter 2. So yeah, that is definitely going on with this one. So on the green component, yeah, it's quite nice. The more that you drink of it, the more kind of grassy and zesty it gets. But let's focus on the front third of the palate and the fruity side of things with this one then. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get a little bit of a bready build up there. You can feel that, but it's quite a wet sort of fresh white bread there. But then the base of that front third of your palate, again, you get the little bit of bread crust, the soft white bread, and there's a wee touch of the oatiness there. And on top of that, you get that nice juicy bubble where the kind of oily fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. And if you know these hops, this one is exactly as you'd expect. Back of that front third of your palate, it's a little bit more passion fruity. You get that strong kind of passion fruit. As you move further forward, it's got a lovely kind of oily, it's got a lovely kind of juicy and slightly oily mango-y note to it. There are 1 or 2 wee hints of apricot there and stuff as you move towards the kind of middle of that front third of your palate, and there's a wee bit of pineapple too. But then into the front half of the front third of your palate, you get that big juicy, slightly oily orangey note from the mosaic. So yeah, Citra and Galaxy are dominating the back half of the front third. The back half of the front third of your palate. Mosaic comes out a wee bit more further forward. There's maybe a wee touch of lime there just as you reach the front tip of the tongue too, and that mixes in with the grassy esters on the front tip of your tongue. As I say, it gets a wee bit more grassy and zesty the further you go into the aftertaste with this beer. But lovely, soft, juicy, fruity notes coming out of this one. This is a beautiful New England double IPA, and as I say, it reminds me a lot of, Amazing Haze and Narangi, going back to the sort of 2016, 2017 era. This one, this is very, very nice, but a big oaty, creamy thing, this one for sure. This doesn't have that big sweet component that you can get in a number of these beers these days. But yeah, it covers its alcohol very well too, at 8%. So I think on this note, we should move to the mouthfeel. So for me, what would we say? Yeah, pretty full-bodied. Carbonate, kind of bottom end of full-bodied. Carbonation is very, very smooth. As I say, it's got, It's got this lovely big kind of creamy mouthfeel to it. At the same time, it's got a bit of an oiliness to it, and at 8%, you want a wee bit of that. You do want this to be a kind of big, thick beer, for sure. The malt base, as I've said, is very, very smooth and kind of creamy. Not really a sweetness to it. Hoppy bitterness, I think this is maybe about 40 IBUs. You do get a little bit more bitterness out of it, and you know it's a double IPA. I think you tend to need a little bit more IBU with these. I think 40 IBUs would be a bit reasonable. And then the fruity side of things, it's got a lovely, as I say, a bit of tropical fruit in there, a bit more of a kind of citrusy sort of fruit. But yeah, I think this goes together very, very well. So it gets a big, big thumbs up from me, this one. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that with this one. Really nicely done, New England Double IPA, and I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this again. So yeah, a very good recommendation from the Caledonian Craft Beer Merchant in Dunfermline. So make sure you check out that link in the video description below if you're watching from the central Scotland area. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Verdant Brewing, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the near future. But this one was the There Was No Why 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA with Citric Galaxy and Mosaic, a rebrew of one from 2019, and it was pretty damn awesome. But yeah, as I say, thank you again for watching my reviews. Let me know your own thoughts on this one. Let me know your favourite beers from Verdant. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.